It doesn't take much looking to find some pretty horrible examples of children who became extremely violent after being put on psychiatric drugs. Kip Kinkle, for example, shot his parents, then went to his high school and killed 2 and wounded 23 more while withdrawing from Prozac. Christopher Pittman was taking Zoloft when he shot both his grandparents and burned down their house. And Eric Harris, who killed 13 people at Columbine, then committed suicide, was on Luvox. 9 of the last 13 school shooters were either on or withdrawing from psychiatric drugs, and the medical records of the others are sealed, so we may never find out the truth. But instead of warning us, psychiatrists and drug companies are playing down the most serious side effects and ignoring the rest. Matthew loved his family, loved us so much. But when he jumped from the bridge, he was wearing a life vest. The reason, and he wrote it on a note that he left in his truck, and said that he was wearing a life vest so that he could be found, so that his parents wouldn't have to worry about where he was. Now, is this a child who wants to hurt his family? He wouldn't have hurt us for the world. Sorry, Annie. But this is what happened. This is what this drug did to my son. It made him someone he wasn't. Matthew, she knows also, because she had a sweet little girl who was only 12 years old. You know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying, and I still think back to being in that doctor's office and saying, I don't want her on this, and his casualness, his, what are you worried about? And not knowing any different. We've all talked about the fact we just didn't know. But the guilt that comes from watching people give your child medication or giving it to them yourself, making sure they take it because they tell you, don't let them miss a day.
That's right.
And it ends up killing them. I think about the warning signs that we had that we didn't know were warning signs. I remember sitting there watching Candace go like this, and I said, Candace, what's wrong? And she said, I don't know, I'm just itchy, and not realizing it, that it was that feeling of needles, of burning under her skin, and she was trying to get rid of it, but she was 12 years old and she couldn't tell me. And I'm thinking, oh, it's
shaking.
Yeah.
Showing me how his hands were shaking.
And I say
telling me that his heart was beating fast.
Candace was shaking, and I remember thinking I really should take her to a neurologist because, you know, her hand is shaking. Sometimes it would be hard to hold something. But not knowing that that was a sign that the severity of the amount of medication in her system, I just assumed it was dry skin. And I think about her curled up in her father's arms laughing. And that's my last time I saw my child alive. Who would ever assume that this happy child that is embraced in her father's love with her sister right there would walk up to her room and hang herself from the valance of her bed? And nobody knew it. They were there. Nobody knew it because we had no signs. I think about days when I thought I was going to die myself because my pain was so intense that nobody could live through the breaking heart that I was suffering. I remember being in a fetal position on my laundry room floor, thinking I was dying, and calling my therapist saying, I don't think I can live. I can't catch my breath. I can't live. And what did keep me living was the fact that I had a surviving child who needed me. And I needed to be there for her because I don't know if I could have done it. And I remember Candace had drawn a little heart on her hand. And in the heart, she had written 911. And then she had covered it with a bumblebee sticker. She didn't know she was going to die. She thought she was going to be saved. She didn't know she was doing this. 12 years old.
Oh my. Okay.
There's Matt. Matthew was sick, but it was basketball practice.
Matthew had 22 points the other night. He was awesome.
Matthew's personality was infectious. His love of life was infectious. Everybody wanted a part of it.
He was just a breath of fresh air, like sunshine, and people loved being around him.
He was outgoing and always smiling and funny and, playful.
Matthew was a friend to everybody. He'd play with anybody, young or old or this or that.
My first memory of Matt was in the 3rd grade. We had the same teacher.
We really became friends in 3rd grade when we had a class together.
The first time I had ever met him actually was at a high school football game.
And we hit it off instantly. I remember one of the first things I remember about Matt and the Steubings. I remember coming home and telling my dad that they're all a bunch of angels.
He was so much fun. He taught me how to skip school.
He was always supportive, like, if there was anything wrong, he knew how to pick you up.
We were on a basketball team together. We played basketball together all the time growing up.
We spent hours next to each other, ribbing each other, and by the end I was just proud as I could be to finally, at least in one of the games I beat him.
I mean, it was very easy to stand on the side and just grin ear to ear because the kid was absolutely cool. And in my life, he is still cool.